Hello guys, as we are here for our Sunday Materia class, not Materia, it's Materia Pura class. We are studying one remedy with introduction from Materia Pura. So we have our mentor, teacher, friend, guide, Tikva Sasoon. She is here, she is from Israel and very spontaneous speaker. I'm okay, Tikwa, you can continue.
And that is Sanjay who is talking to you. And our organization is Homeopathy for Humanity. And if you enjoy the content that we put out on a twice a week basis, do subscribe and watch so that you know that we have more videos that come out. Okay, we have an interesting video, remedy today in our proving data by Hahnemann. Very, very interesting, surrounded with controversy. So there are complications here. The remedy is ANGUSTURA. And ANGUSTURA is surrounded by some controversy about what the medicine actually is. For example, when we take our Boricki Materia Medica, it is a totally different medicine than what Hahnemann proved here. Therefore, we have a little bit of confusion amongst the authors of Materia Medica. So considering that this is Materia Medica from Hahnemann, Materia Medica Pura, we are going to go with this one, with everybody to know that there is confusion surrounding this lesser used, lesser known remedy. Okay, so ANGUSTURA, the best show a picture please, Sanjay, of the ANGUSTURA under consideration by Hahnemann. It looks like that, and it's a bark from a tree. It's from South America. Yeah, there we go. It's indigenous to this region. See where it says native and it has the green box. That's South America. Okay, and now we can bring up the data. So Angustura trifoliata. Trifoliata means 3 leaves. That means that this medicine has 3 leaves on the plant, just like we saw in the picture. And Boricki has it as the Angustura vera, which is a totally different plant. So there is some confusion here. Okay, the best pieces of the bark of this South American tree, it was called, see, this is where we have more confusion because it's called Bonplandia trifoliata, are about 1 line in thickness, slightly bent on their external convex side, covered with a grayish white, easily scraped off, fine coating, transversed by fine transverse furrows on the inner concave surface of a light brownish yellow, very friable and cinnamon colored and porous on the fractured surface, of a disagreeable spicy smell and of a penetrating, somewhat hot, spicy bitter taste. The powder of which resembles rhubarb powder in color. The decoction is not precipitated by a solution of sulfate of iron. 50 grains of this powder digested in 100 drops of alcohol without heat and so as to form a tincture, are employed for medicinal purposes after appropriate dilution. So we make the tincture and then we dilute it accordingly in order to bring it up to the basically around a 30 C, as Hahnemann gives us the instructions for, and we use that for our proving. And this was called fever bark. It has an old historical use, and it was used kind of as an alternative to cinchona. And it was called fever bark because it was given to people who had fevers, just like cinchona was. Cinchona was not only used for malaria back in the olden days, it was also used for all types of fever, much in the way that people would give Tylenol or acetaminophen nowadays. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so there is some confusion. Hahnemann gives this plant as Bonplandia trifoliata. Now it goes, for many years, complaints have been publicly made about a substitution in commerce for the true Angustura bark of a false bark, which displays dangerous and poisonous properties. And for many years, the tree from which this false bark was derived was unknown. Now the Bruschia ferruginea is said to be the tree from which this false suspicious bark is derived. Chemical investigations have shown that it furnishes the same alkaloid as Nux vomica, ignatia, etc. So strychnine, right? So this Bruschia ferruginea has strychnine in it, just like Nux and ignatia has. However, the above mentioned genuine Angustura bark likewise possesses uncommonly great medicinal power, so that when it is procured direct from the tree, Bonplandia trifoliata, at St. Thomas del Angustura of South America, as it is now, without any doubt, it can, like every other very powerful medicine, do great harm if given in immoderate doses and in unsuitable cases. In F.A.G. Emmert's Kurgeschichte, I can't say that because it's German and I don't know German properly, and Ivona's not with us tonight to help us with our German, from Huffland's Forum, August 1815, page 75, a case is related where 3 tablespoons of a decoction of 5 ounces of presumably spurious Angustura bark evaporated to 5 ounces of liquid were given to a boy 5.5 years old. This unreasonable dose, which contains about 1.5 ounces of Angustura powder, proved fatal, as we read with a shudder, in a couple of hours with horrible sufferings. This substance will be the same dose, have a like effect not only on a boy, but on an adult person. In this fatal case described by Emmert, the boy presented the following symptoms: trembling, soon passing into violent convulsions. When the medical attendant touched the arm in order to feel the pulse, tetanus suddenly ensued. The eyelids were wide open. The eyes were staring, projecting, and immovable. Trismus, with wide separation of the lips so that the front teeth were quite exposed. Tension of individual facial muscles. The limbs were stretched out to the utmost, stiff and stark. The spinal column and the head strongly drawn backwards. The trunk was from time to time shaken by violent jerking along the back, as from electric shocks, and somewhat raised. Cheeks and lips became blue, respiration intermitting. After an attack that lasted 6 minutes, the boy breathed with great effort, panting with blueness of the cheeks and lips, great and frequent longing for coffee. Even swallowing tepid water excited tetanic spasms. pulse 102, spasmodic, and irregular. So he's having what they're calling tetanus. This is in the time period before people knowing what tetanus actually was, an anaerobic bacteria that sometimes infects wounds where there is little oxygen. Instead, they're calling tetanus a symptom as opposed to a infection. Okay. The tetanus sometimes was returned without perceptible cause, sometimes excited by a noise or by touching any portion of the body. He constantly called out that no one should touch him. That kind of reminds us of arnica, right? Don't approach, don't touch. After the tetanus, the eyes were closed, the forehead. We should probably replace the word spasm with tetanus, because he was having terrible spasms. There's spasms in this remedy. After the tetanus, the eyes were closed, the forehead and face covered with sweat, blueness of the cheeks and lips, groaning without acknowledged pains. Death after an hour. Half an hour after death, the body was stiff and stark. So rigor mortis set in very quickly. After 24 hours, there was already a strong corpse-like smell outside and inside. On opening the veins, cherry-colored fluid blood was found. The right lung was externally pale and bloated, internally full of blood. The left lung was externally blue, then incised, when it was cut, blackish and very heavy from blood. Besides the above, other reports of the consequences of strong doses of angustura have been recorded, such as spasmodic twitchings, vertigo, anxiety, immobility of the muscles as from stiffening. And a report has been communicated to me by the late Dr. Wurzner of Eilenberg regarding the 4 persons each who took from 10 to 12 grains of the extract in the form of pills, in whom there occurred stiffness of all the muscles of the body, like tetanus. One fell to the ground suddenly, retaining his consciousness. Closure of the jaws, trismus. Okay, so we have something that looks very much like a tetanus-like situation from this drug. Right now we're in the poisoning section. And it's not hard with some substances to produce a poisoning. And that is part of the reason why we had such a long discussion today in the group about mother tinctures, because mother tinctures can actually be dangerous, and that's something that we need to be aware of. Sometimes we give a patient a medicine to take and we give them a whole bunch of it. Yes, Sanjay? I can't hear you at all.
Yeah, I could like to say one thing about the
Oh.
mother tinctures.
Yes.
What mother tinctures being used in homeopathy are not same which are used in the other systems, because mother tincture itself is being diluted. They are not just fruit juice. They had been already mixed with some amount of vehicle. There is some standard formulation for different remedies. Poisons are made differently. Plant juices, roots, fruits, been made differently. So there is a certain 1:2, 1:8, 1:9, 1:10. The formula for mixing them with the dilution, whatever it's been used. Before they first potency begins, mother tinctures are not just a crude juice.
No, they're never just a crude juice, and herbologists do not use them as a crude juice either. So like if we go to the proving of pulsatilla, and we've put the pulsatilla as the green plant 1 to 100 in alcohol and let that sit overnight, would that be a mother tincture? Because that's what you take then 1 drop to 99 to then prepare the remedy. Is that what they're selling as a mother tincture?
No, 1:99 is not, that is a potency. But before potency began, before first potency began, the mother tincture uh, is with proportionate diluted form of that crude substance.
So you can't use a mother tincture to make an LM potency.
Yeah,
A mother tincture is an entirely separate medicinal product.
yeah,
It's not part of the medicine making process. Do you have any mother tincture in your clinic?
yeah, I have.
Yeah, break one out.
Okay.
The only mother tincture that I have or use is calendula for like wounds. Let's see what this bottle says. Okay, so we have shepherd's purse. Okay, shepherd's purse. And how does it say, what does it say it is?
You can see the box.
I can barely see the box. Can you read the box?
It's nothing on the box or medicine. It's something written in red, high quality of our manufacturing techniques. Oh,
So if I were to go out into my yard in the springtime, I will find that product, that plant grows in my yard. And if I were to make,
Bursa pectoris, this plant,
yes. It's
can you read
common
it?
name, yeah, it's commonly known as shepherd's purse. And women use it to stop menstrual bleeding.
Yeah.
And it is, it's indigenous where I live. And I could go out and make a mother tincture of it according to the directions given in the organon.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't be a mother tincture? If I were to.
It's same. It's same. Because
then
Hahnemann has given clear indications to make mother tincture
Okay,
for different products.
the indications for making something out of a fresh plant are given in pulsatilla and in the organon, the directions of how much fresh plant and how much alcohol, and then the stoppering of it and the letting it sit.
Can you see it?
No, I can't see it. What are the proportions? Because see, Some of these things that are made into the first preparation can
He
still
has
be
made,
poisonous.
he had a preparation of mother tinctures, mother solution, and mother powder. The mother tinctures, four classes: most juicy, medium juicy, juicy, and less juicy or dry.
We want to go with medium juicy here. What's the proportions?
So I need to look the other book. I have that. Yeah, there
Because I'm
is.
a little bit unclear as to whether or not mother tinctures
Yeah,
are
yeah.
the
Second, medium juicy, 1:1.
1-to-1.
Second,
I really
class
can't
two,
see it. I
class
really
two.
can't. I
No,
can't
sorry.
see what it is. You have to read it. I
Now,
can't see.
see, you're talking about medium juicy, right?
Yeah, I would
Class
say
two.
that, okay,
Here he has given class two preparation method in Thuja, 2:3. Two parts of medicine with mix in three parts of vehicle, alcohol or distilled water.
okay.
And drug strength is half. It's been proportionate. And here he has also, where he has written, also mentioned in this chart.
Okay, so if we're using, okay, mother tincture is the same thing as the first step of drug preparation.
Yeah,
So there is a potential for people to take too much medicine when we're using mother tinctures.
exactly.
Right, so there is a danger there.
Exactly. There is a danger, but it is less danger than what the, if you giving a direct juice of that herb.
Definitely. But an herbologist is also going to use something similar to a mother tincture.
Yeah. They
And
are
old,
also, they are also not giving the poison directly.
yes, but poisonings, accidental poisonings have happened far too often. And that's part
Exactly.
of the, it's a little bit of a risk. Okay, so we were talking about, that was a little bit of an aside here about the mother tincture, because that came up in the group today while Sanjay was busy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have here trismus and technic is kind of like seizure problems from this drug. Okay. Very similar, those slighter symptoms will be found. See, this is a poisoning. We just read about a poisoning. Very similar, those slighter symptoms will be found in the following list of the effects of carefully selected pieces of Angustura bark on the healthy body. I have employed for homeopathic purposes the smallest portion of a drop of the billionth dilution of the above described alcoholic tincture, but have found that in some cases a still higher dilution would have been more suitable. Camphor is not an antidote for its too violent effects, but coffee is. So if the medicine acts too strongly and produces an aggravation, we don't use camphor, we use coffee. And then we have in the proving, we have Franz, Gross, Harnisch, Langheimer, Mayer, Michler, Mosdorf, Villenens, and
Wilsinus.
Villicinus,
Wilsinus.
and no old school authorities are quoted. In this and edition, Hahnemann has added 3 of his own symptoms and excluded 6 of those of his disciples that appear in the first edition. Okay. We have vertigo, confusion, throbbing. There's some interesting points here about this dreamy state. Sometimes he loses himself, now in a dreamy state, now in complete absence of thought, and he readily falls asleep when reading. Great distraction when he occupies himself with something serious. Other things immediately come into his mind. Confusion of the head, as from a skin stretched over the brain. Confusion and contractive feeling in the head on walking quickly. In the afternoon, along with repeated warmth of the body, excessive liveliness, and very active memory, but he can think of nothing attentively on account of a not disagreeable scheme that forces itself upon him. And he almost thinks it's true and feasible, and owing to which he neither sees nor hears anything beside. It's like a very strong waking dream state. Okay, so there's like this man and the provers are saying that they're dreamy and they're having kind of like daze. It's like a daze, a dream state, like a being asleep, being awake, kind of confusion of the mind.
Is it something like intoxicated feeling?
It doesn't say as if intoxicated.
Because
They are,
above we have seen that is you can continue.
okay. In the morning from rising, great weight in the forehead, cramp-like headache, headache in the forehead, aching in the left half of the brain, aching in the temples, towards evening, aching in the forehead, headache with heat in the face. The headache always occurs in the evening when it becomes dark and lasts until he goes to sleep. Headache as if all moved around in the brain with aching and boring pain, especially in the temple. If he lays his head down on the table, he feels, with the exception of some tension in the forehead, for the moment nothing, but the pain soon comes back, only not so severe. On the other hand, when he raises his head up, it increases to its former intensity. So bending over and laying the head on the table ameliorates to some degree. So we have aching pains, stitching pains, stiffness, numbness, tensive pains, twitchings, quivering between eyebrows, some stitches above the eyes, contraction of the pupils, and dilation of the pupils. So we have both. In the afternoon and evening, sometimes a violent burning in the inner half of the eyes themselves and in the inner canthus. Pressure in the right eye, both eyes aching as if dazzling light struck them and the eyes become weak. Oh, we have some interesting things here. We have a cured symptom coming up. Itching eyes, itching stitches, feeling of dryness, sore eyelids, sharper and more distinct vision at the distance than usual. Long sight, he could see distant objects distinctly, though he is naturally very short-sighted. That's the curative. So those provers had trouble seeing. And then when they did the proving, their vision improved. This is the secondary action, the cure in the organism. See? Sharper and more distinct vision at a distance than usual. long sight. He could see distant objects distinctly when he naturally is very short-sighted. Maybe I should try that and then I won't need glasses anymore. Should we try it?
Yeah.
I think I don't have this medicine. I don't own this one. I've never used it. Have you ever used this medicine, Bushra? Is she there?
He is there.
Okay, Sanjay, have you ever used this medicine?
No.
No, me either. Anyway, it is next in line for our reading. But anyway, it cures the inability to, you've never used it either? No.
I will,
No, she said
I
she
will try.
typed she
I will
hasn't.
try to get this medicine for sure.
And who are you going to give it to that has glasses, huh? We should try it. Seriously. If I could get out of my glasses, I'd be really happy about that. Because I don't have any trouble seeing up close. Okay. The hearing is much more acute than usual. It's also a cured symptom. Ringing in the right ear. Stitches in the anterior part of the meatus adductorius externus. A burning in the inner ear, cramp in the external ear, sensation of something came in front of the ear and something were sticking in it, transient drawing several times, now in the right, now in the left, tearing in a boil over the right mastoid process, heat in the ears and both cheeks. There is some heat as a theme in here. Great dryness of the lips and mouth without thirst. Light drawing in the undefined upper molars. Drawing pain. We have drawing pains in the teeth. Yep. Throbbing toothache and a hollow tooth. Remember we talked about hollow tooth last time. That's before people had fillings. Burning on the left side of the tongue, almost on its border, as from pepper. So if anybody says that they have a burning of their tongue as though they've been having peppers, there you know where to go. Roughness and dryness of the back of the palate and in the fauces, without thirst, worse when swallowing. The voice is louder and bolder is another curative secondary action of the organism. So we have a few people that were cured by this remedy. Both in the hearing and the eyes. Tastes like peach kernels in the mouth. Bread tastes sour, bitter taste in the morning, flat taste in the mouth, after dinner, dinner tasted good, bitter taste, and several slight irritations, no desire to drink, no pleasure in doing so, and yet sensation of thirst more for warm than for cold drinks. The cold drinks did not produce chilliness. We have hiccups, thirst for cold drinks. Nausea. In the evening during slumber, he had viscid, sickly tasting and putrid mucus in the mouth and could not drink enough. Though he has great appetite, food is not relished. He feels as if it was repugnant to him at the same time. An incomplete irritation causes fullness in the chest, and yet he cannot get satiated with a very plentiful meal. Walking, nausea, fall down in a faint, exhaustion all over, not relieved by sitting down. Nausea rose to his head and he became hungry. Various pains in the abdomen, stitching pains, shooting pains. We have lumbar cutting pain. We have cutting pains, tearing pains, cramp-like pains, pinching pains, pressure from within outwards with anxiety. And then we have the os pubis, is mentioned a few times in this proving as well. Pain in the os pubis. Scroll up a little bit. Above the os pubis, a cramp-like pressure when sitting, as if someone bored outwards there. So there's a cramping from inward to outward, and that's a modality. A fermentation and rumbling of the abdomen, as if diarrhea would ensue with displacement of flatulence. Gurgling in the abdomen. A drinking warm milk, cutting and gurgling in the hypogastrium above the os pubis again. So above the os pubis, there's a various sensations as if there's going to be diarrhea. There's a lot of feeling that there's going to be diarrhea in this remedy. So we can see that it is a possible remedy for diarrhea, as also as it is for tetanic-like spasms. Oh, and we have here, oh, no, this is actually the one that's in parentheses, is a possible, maybe, iffy symptom. Okay, about the worms. Okay, so there's a lot of sensations of as if there's going to be diarrhea. And then there's diarrhea, and then there's some constipation. Frequent, though not urgent, called a stool. He felt as if the stool would not come, and when he endeavored to evacuate, only some hard pieces came away with much pressing and straining. With orange-colored urine, it soon becomes turbid. Frequent urging to urinate with scanty discharge of urine. Frequent discharge of copious white urine preceded by pressing. In the bladder, and after urinating, ineffectual straining, strangury. And then we have a bold symptom here, a voluptuous itching at the point of the glands. That's on the penis, for anybody who doesn't know, which compelled him to rub it when walking in the open air. Itching of the scrotum. On the prepuce, shooting, sometimes itching. Then we have a couple more things that are in parentheses, which makes them with some doubt. Tickling irritation in the larynx. Want to give us that tickling irritation in the larynx, Sanjay?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to ask you to demonstrate tickling irritation in the larynx.
Live
Let's hear,
demonstration.
yeah, let's hear that little cough from your tickling in the larynx. Short, dry cough. Frequent short cough, followed by a single sob. Now that's interesting. All day long coughing from an irritation deep in the larynx, which only when walking in the open air was associated with rattling in the chest and with much expectoration of yellow mucus. Violent cough from deep down in the trachea in the morning with expectoration of yellow mucus. Scraping in the throat, you must hawk without being able to bring up anything. Can you make that hawking sound for us, Sanjay? Come on, you're even having throat problems. I know you can do it naturally.
No.
It's too shy. Overcome with shyness. Cutting pressure in both sides of the chest. At first, only when inspiring. Afterwards, increasing to cutting blows, which continue even when holding the breath. Okay, cutting pressure on both sides of the chest, only when inspiring. Afterwards, it increased to cutting blows, which continue even when holding the breath. Oh, that's some chest pain there, huh? Transient tightness of the chest, tightness in the chest when walking quickly. There we go. We're making some of those good throat noises now. A sharp aching, as if it were pinching pain in the upper part of the chest. Cutting, stitching pains shortly before going to sleep and after lying down. Spasms of the chest when suddenly exposed to severe cold. Okay, this is interesting. For those of you who have never been in like a place where it's frozen, when you go outside, where you're somewhere where it's below freezing and there's ice outside and there's snow outside and it's very, very, very cold. And you go from inside the house to outside the house. Sometimes that first breath is kind of like, it just hurts. It hurts. And that's what they're saying here, as when suddenly exposed to severe cold. Okay. Pressure upon the whole of the right side of the chest increased with inspiration. Great oppression and pressure of the chest with aching in the sides of the frontal bone and violent palpitation of the heart. Cutting blows, sternum, spine, towards the interior. Heart palpitations, sitting and bending forwards. Painful sensation of contraction of the heart. Lying in bed, feels a violent palpitation of the heart, relieved by sitting up. A beating pain in the cardiac region. When he takes a deep breath, as he can, it seems to stop under the upper part of the sternum. He feels there's a pain, almost like obtuse shooting or pressure. On drawing in a breath internally, a trembling feeling, like a hiccup. So he has to draw his breath, as it were, in two jerks. That's an interesting one, kind of like a kind of thing. Stitches of the sternum, cutting pressure, thoracic cavity, sharp shooting, itching in the last right true rib, which does not go off even by scratching, but afterwards disappears spontaneously. In the morning in bed, pain in the sacrum, as if all were broken. After rising, she could not lift anything from the ground for some hours. Then hunger, followed by cutting in the abdomen and purging at last, mucus evacuations. Okay, so she woke up in the morning, felt like her lower back was broken. When she got up, she could not lift anything from the ground for some hours. Then she felt hungry. Then she had a cutting pain in the abdomen, and she had diarrhea of mucus. That's an interesting symptom. All night of pressing in the sacrum as if bruised. She woke up often from this pain. It was worse about 4 a.m., but when she got up, it was gone. In the morning in bed, pain of stiffness between the scapula and the neck, like a drawing. On getting up, she could not move herself with the arms, for pain would not turn her neck all the forenoon. For several successive mornings until noon, with exhaustion of the whole body. Stitches below and near the sacrum when sitting, dull clucking in the sacrum, the osacrum. We have a lot of sacral pains in here as well. Bruised pain in the left cervical muscles toward the shoulder, only when moving, a bruised pain, as if overstretched, when it's relieved in the open air. So that's better in the open air. Tension in the dorsal muscles of the armpit is difficulty in raising the arms. Cutting stitches on the scapula. In the nape, a drawing stitch. strong quivering in the cervical muscles of the left side. Anybody else want to read for a while?
Okay, you can read important aspect.
So all of it
Good.
kind of has important aspects. Okay, so there's quivering pains, cutting pains in the armpits, aching pains, bruised pains in the arm bone, left arm heavy when walking, aching externally at the bend of the elbow as it were drawn down and he lets it hang freely. On stretching out the arm, sensation as he had a great weight for a long time in the hand, a kind of paralysis, stiffness in the elbow joints, weakness of the forearms. What I find helpful when I'm reading through proving data is to like do the movements that you read while you're reading them. Okay. So on stretching the arm, a sensation as he held a great weight for a long time in the hand. So his arm just kind of feels frozen there. Stiffness in the elbow joints with weakness of the forearms. Pain in the elbow joint, as if in the sinews, that would be the tendons, as if he had received a blow there, increased by moving the arm and by leaning upon it after walking in the open air. So some of these things come on after walking in the open air, and some of these things are better walking in the open air. And now we have tearing pain in the arms, in the bones, worse when at rest and when moving. And stitching in the right wrist, the stitching pain, hot feeling on the back of the left hand, rheumatic drawing, aching on the back of the right hand in the evening, of 2 stitches on the back of the right hand in front of the wrist, drawing of 1 finger of the left hand, pain in the right middle finger as if it were torn out, insensibility of the ring finger as if dumb, stiff, and dead. Wow. Fingers of the right hand are so cold to the touch with feeling of cold. Aching pain internally in the flesh of the left thumb ball. Drawing around the thumb joint as if it were sprained, especially when he bends the thumb. The whole right side of the abdomen and of the thigh and leg as if bruised, if it would break on account of rheumatic drawing when walking. Sudden heaviness and exhaustion of the lower limbs. In the pelvis when walking, a drawing, squeezing sensation. Cramp in the upper border of the os iliac, extending to the spine. Pain in the hip. We have a whole bunch of different things with the hip joint here and the os ilii, or the iliac or the sacroiliac joint and the hip joint kind of things, as if dislocated or like a cramp. A hip joint again. In the front, as if dislocated. And almost useless for walking. Now we get some sciatica. Sciatic nerve, back of the thigh, down the leg. Inguinal joints, deep in the sinews, and aching drawing, fine stitches. In case they can't get up from a seat without that pain. Twitching, stitches in the left thigh and the superior border of the os ilii. Extremely painful only when sitting. So there's a lot of pain there while sitting. When flexing the knee, painful tension in the right thigh, fine tearing in the thighs, aching, drawing pain when walking, cramping pain in the back of the thigh, only after walking. The front and the back of the recti muscles of the thigh, a tense of aching pain on extending, fine itching on the thighs, better by rubbing. He cannot walk at all quick. The lower limbs feel stiff. Remember when we read about what happened to that boy who took too much medicine? Now you can see why there'd be all the pain and stiffness. Spasmodic stretching in the calf. Paralytic sensation, constriction of the ligaments in the middle. On crossing the legs, he feels a spasmodic tearing in the heel of the left foot that is planted firmly on the ground, and in its ball, an aching drawing on the knee of the other leg that is thrown across. And we've got pain in the tibia, burning pain, obtuse pain, a sensation if it would break when walking, aching pain in the ankles as dislocated, numb and stiffness up to the knees, pressing pain as from dislocation, cramping in the feet, cramping pain in the foot, cramp in the foot when walking, cramp-like pain in the foot, aching pain, paralysis of the ankle joints. There's a lot of ankle joint in this one. Obtuse drawing of the ankle joint. The left, on the border of the left foot, externally on the projection of the fifth metatarsal, a cramp-like aching as if he had sprained it. The outer border of the foot and the part below the outer ankle goes to sleep when walking. Shooting in the heel. In the sole of the foot, a sudden tearing when sitting. Perspiration of the feet. Paralytic weakness of the hands and elbow joints. He can hardly move them, but without stiffness or other hindrance, chilliness and loss of vital heat. Cracking in almost all the joints, but you can't hear it. Cracking in all the joints. Great irritability and strained vivacity, withdrawing in the limbs, as if the tendons were stretched in the afternoon. I have itching in bed with flat, painful sores, sensation of the body's strength went away, and if especially the marrow in the bones were stiffer and more coagulated. I wonder how that feels. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
What would that feel like? We can understand, things like a tearing pain or a stiffness of the arm or the shoulder and different things like that. But what would this mean to have the marrow of the bones stiffer and more coagulated? I have no clue.
Sensation in whole body as if strength went away.
Mhm.
As if, especially the marrow in the bone were stiffer and more coagulated. What is that sensation?
Yeah, we don't know what that sensation is. That's a mystery
Because
sensation.
marrow is inside the bone and even we cannot feel it.
Right. Therefore, the peculiar thing there. What does he mean by that? Yep, we understand the stiffness of the arm, the pain of the shoulder, the tingling of the hand. We get all that kind of thing. So that makes sense. But this here of the bone marrow is a little bit hard to understand. Okay, when not engaged in any mental work, he is tolerably brisk and lively, but he becomes dazed when he reads anything and immediately falls asleep. Remember, we had that in the sensorium in the very beginning.
Yeah.
In the morning, discomfort, frequent yawning, and disinclination to all work. Here we're falling asleep again while reading. There's a problem here with falling asleep while reading with this drug. I'd say that that seems to be a pretty good theme. Falls asleep while reading while seated and starts up at the slightest noise and has a shock with great rigor, which goes through him. Frequent attacks of yawning without sleepiness and a cramp-like pain in the jaws. There we go back to the trismus with the cramp-like pain in the jaws. Very frequent yawning with stretching and extending the limbs. In the evening, great weariness and irresistible desire to sleep. He sleeps for an hour while sitting with snoring, but when he goes to bed, he cannot sleep before 1 o'clock. So he's falling asleep in his chair, sleeps for a little while, and then can't sleep again. In the evening, great drowsiness until 9 o'clock, then wakefulness until after midnight. Sleep disturbed by dreams until 6 a.m. And then he wakes up wide and falls asleep again. In the morning, he could not free himself from sleepiness and remains drowsy till noon. Okay, so this guy, he has disturbing dreams until 6 a.m. Then he's wide awake, but then again falls asleep. And then when he wakes up later in the morning, he was sleepy and drowsy until noon.
Yeah, he is sleepy in the evening up till midnight, and then after 1 o'clock, he cannot. Actually, he cannot go to. He's drowsy in the evening, but cannot sleep up till 1 a.m. Right?
Yep, and we have 1 a.m. and then the next one is until after midnight.
Yeah.
And then we have sleep towards morning with dreams. Vivid dreams, sometimes disagreeable, sometimes anxious. With frequent awaking from sleep, on again falling asleep, he always dreamt of quite other things. So each time he'd wake up with a bad dream, he'd fall asleep and have a different new bad dream. Restless sleep, waking without cause, restless sleep, at night restless sleep, and only towards morning with dreams. Sleep restless and full of dreams, but without waking, and on 2 nights, pollutions. That means the nocturnal emission that he ejaculated in his sleep. Very confused dreams, sometimes of horrible character. Okay, so there's nightmares here. In the morning, chilliness in bed, not followed by heat. So here we're in like the fever section. Violent rigor, that'd be shivering over the back when he walked about the room in the forenoon. In the afternoon, about 3 o'clock, internal shivering with great thirst, not followed by heat for several days. In the afternoon, about 3 o'clock, looks like we have a time period here with fever at 3 o'clock. Well, not fever, chill, the shivering at 3 o'clock with goose skin. You know what goose skin is?
That all these hairs will raise in shivering.
Right. Yep, the shivering with all the hairs raised and it being all bumpy. We call it goose flesh too. So he's having shivering with the goose flesh, with the hair raised and the coldness. Better in the open air without thirst for several days. After the shivering, only a slight heat. Usually when people shiver, when they have a fever, then they usually throw a hot heat. But he's saying it's only a slight heat. Towards evening, rather warm all over the body. In the evening in bed, heat about the head with perspiration on the forehead. Heat at night, especially in the forehead, can't sleep. Forenoon before 9 a.m., there's rigor. Towards evening, increased warmth of the cheeks and body, aching pain and confusion of the head, the temples and the sides of the forehead. We have heat in the face here.
There is in general shivering we have seen,
Mhm,
and with heat in the face.
mhm.
It's somewhat like arsenic modality.
So here we come across something interesting at symptom 290. Warmth of all the body except the head. The cheeks were cold, and this is a cured symptom. He had hot cheeks, then he did the proving, and then he had cold cheeks. The asterisk means that it's a cured symptom. So we could dispel the myth that people have to be perfectly healthy when they undergo a proving, because we see regularly that there are cured symptoms. Okay, then we have a lack of confidence. He has no confidence to undertake and carry through voluntary movements. Sadness and crossness. Sadness, discontent with his position, disagreeable sensitiveness to jokes. Slight offenses fill him with bitterness. So he's sensitive to jokes. He's discontent with his position. He's sad, and slight offenses fill him with bitterness. There's easily frightened and startled. When walking in the open air, his disposition is good and cheerful. Cheerful and self-confident that he can undertake anything with power. See, these are curative actions again. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 curative actions. Briskness and activity of mind was a curative action. Cheerfulness and self-confidence that he can undertake anything with power is a curative symptom. When walking in the open air, his disposition is good and cheerful. It's a cured symptom. And then we had the cured symptom with the cheeks being cold instead of hot.
I think we are done.
Yep, we're done. And it ends just like that with the mental state.
Yeah.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
But there is some confusion with the remedy and what it is, because when we look in our Boriki, we have a different plant. But some of the symptoms are the same. So it's a little bit confusing. It's not represented, this remedy is not represented in Boger's Synoptic Key. It is represented in Herring's Guiding Symptoms with the dispute of the confusion of the taxonomy. Which plant is it? Nowadays, it's like super simple to find out what plant it is, because we are able to talk to each other across the world instantaneously in real time. And back in the 1700s and 1800s, that was a mere fantasy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Nowadays, somebody could go out, pick up plant, sit in front of their computer and say, look, it's this plant. And then everybody would then be able to share that information. But back in those days, somebody would go on an expedition that was funded by, let's say, a society, a geographical society or a horticultural society. And then they would go and they would talk to the people who lived in the region. And they would ask them about various plants that they have and what they use and what they use for medicine. They still do this, but now they can do it, a little bit more efficiently. But, it was a great unexplored world a couple hundred years ago. And these exploration societies were a real feature. And people wrote great journal entries about them and all that. And it was an interesting time of exploration. People would go to the North Pole, they'd go to the South Pole, they'd go to the Amazon, they'd go to the Ganges, right? And they'd talk to the people and they'd ask, what do you use for this? And what do you use? And how do you do this? And how do you do that? And then people would take samples and then they'd encase the samples in something. And then they'd write a bunch of data. They put that in the samples, and then sometimes they would send that by ship back to the society with all the different information for all the people to read. And so things have changed a lot when it comes to transmitting information across the world. Now it is a pretty simple task, and the problem is to get people to be involved, to be interested, because people are overtaxed by so many different thoughts and activities and information, where a couple hundred years ago, or even, if you happen to be Indian, maybe 30 years ago, your mother was feeding sticks into a fire to cook dinner. Right, Sanjay?
Yeah, true.
So really,
Shall we conclude this recording?
yep, we are done.